Hello, everyone. It's December 2nd, 2021. This is the weekly Backdrop developer meeting where we talk about the development tasks that are in front of Backdrop uh, community members, and we talk about how we can move things forward. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, and I'm a core committer. We'll do other introductions here. Robert, could you go, and then Greg?
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California, and I just work on various odds and ends that come up.
Awesome. Thank you. Greg, and then Tim.
Hey, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece. Generally interested in anything related to Backdrop and any way that I can help. Very excited about activity in the issue queue. A lot of issues are ready to be committed and a lot of work being done by others. So, yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Tim, and then Joseph.
My name is Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota, and the red fox just ran by my window a minute ago. Again, I haven't seen him all summer, and lately he comes out at all the Backdrop meetings. So I need to have more meetings so I can see the fox. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Joseph, and then Justin.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a backend developer based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And yeah, I have no idea what's been going on because I spent the last 3 weeks moving. Yeah.
Great. Are you still in Las Vegas?
Yes, we are still in Las Vegas. Yeah, the owner of the previous house we were renting sold it to, I don't know, I think it's like a house flipper person, and they didn't want to. They wanted us to leave so that they could renovate the house. So.
Well, glad you're still, where your home is. So.
Right.
Okay, let's see. Let's finish with Justin.
I'm Justin Christopherson. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and contribute to the infrastructure when I can, and some contributed modules recently. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Justin. Let's see. Jenna's not on the meeting today. She normally does the community updates, but I will go through and cover those things. We have 3 new contributed modules in the last week. Masonry Gallery, Conditional Content Block, and Devel Subthemer modules. So thank you for creating and reporting those modules. Some of those are brand new specifically for Backdrop, and some of them are ports from Drupal. So great to have both kinds of modules coming in. Let's see. All right, so we usually now have a forum post where we solicit ideas or topics that we would like to discuss during the weekly meetings. That issue was created and we had a couple of suggestions this week. The first one comes from Indigo Zella, who's asking, what do we do about contrib projects that are not modules and should not be on backdropcms.org or the project installer? And the answer to that looks like it's a little bit fuzzy right now, but she noted that Drush was kind of an exception, that Drush is available and listed on backdropcms.org, but it's not in the download and search functionality inside of the project installer. And possibly if you have another project that is not a module and should not be on the project installer, we could do the same thing as Drush, which is apparently what happened is that Drush is a manually created node on backdropcms.org on which we've turned off releases. And so that makes it so that even if there is a release in GitHub, when it comes over to backdropcms.org, it doesn't create a release on the node so that it won't show up in the project installer and it won't show up on the releases node on backdropcms.org. So that's one option that would be pretty simple. So throw a project in backdrop contrib, and then if we want to prevent it from creating release nodes on backdropcms.org, we could either manually create a release or a project on backdropcms.org and disable it, or the first time you make an official release, it will automatically create a node on backdropcms.org to match it, and then we could edit that node and then disable releases after the fact. So I'd
Um,
probably say let's like proactively create the node on backdropcms.org to, silence it.
Yeah, the other thing is where are these listed? Because do they count as modules? Where do they find them? So we need a different non-project project type or something, utilities or whatever.
Right. Yeah,
I
there's
think,
also a node type on backdropcms.org called project placeholder. And those modules don't show up anywhere that I can find, other than if you go directly to those pages. And a good example of that is CK editor module, but also it applies to like link, email, any module that's been moved into core, or a lot of modules that have been moved into core. They've been uh, converted into like placeholders on backdropcms.org, I think possibly to reserve the namespace so that you don't create a module with the same name as the one that's already in core. We could also create a placeholder project for something that is not a module, because we don't really have a good way of handling these like non-module modules still. But I like the idea of like, I think we have an issue that there's actually been recent discussion on about like supporting more data in .info files where you start putting tags and stuff like that in there. Like just generally speaking, the .info file would be the solution to this problem, that if we want to have a new type, because there's type equals module, type equals theme. If we want to make a new type, type equals placeholder, type equals other or miscellaneous or something like that, we can do that. We need to decide what that should be and what it should do, and then we can incorporate that into the packager. So when a release is created on GitHub, it sends a release notification to backdropcms.org that does the packaging, that creates the archive, creates nodes, create release nodes, does all of the work on backdropcms.org. And then we can decide, if we decide that there's some special functionality, we could make it do new things. Does anyone have thoughts or suggestions on like what it is that we want for this kind of thing for a project that's not a module? So Drush, B, Indigo Zella brought up the PHP CS sniffs as another thing that's not really a module, but would exist in Backdrop Contrib.
yeah, we should allow releases or download links as well, right? But we just don't want them to be shown in the project installer.
Right, I would think a project or a listing on backdrop.org is appropriate, just not in the installer.
Yeah. So we need a way to prevent the installer from listing them, and also the search in backdropcms.org from bringing them up as modules. So I'll find the issue that we had, and there's a respective issue in d.org. I'll see what they went with.
Yeah,
It's one of those. Sorry, go ahead.
how would you find a module like Drush, for example? Like we don't have a mechanism for that on backdropcms.org. Like where should we put it, Because the search is for modules. It's literally you go to modules first and then there's the search.
Well, we have a themes search and a module search, don't we? So couldn't we have an other page or one thing that searches everything? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I just like a different project type on backdrop.org that's separate from the modules.
Yeah.
I like the search everything idea. Yeah, there's modules, themes, and layout searches right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the idea of just search for everything.
What about a category helper?
Yeah, utilities, things like that, or tools or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. Well, so it'd have to be type, like in the .info file, you'd have to say type equals something, and it would be singular if we follow convention. So type equals module. Type equals tool.
Tool.
Doesn't sound. I actually don't like that because tool has a negative connotation.
How about utility?
But I like utility. Yeah.
Tool.
Uh,
Robert's suggestion.
yeah. New category: utility type equals utility.
I'm looking at backdropcms.org and I see under the add-ons a new thing that is called, like it has module, themes, layout templates, and also backdrop add-ons.
Add-ons
But that's the okay. That's the landing page,
Yeah, that's the landing page. Yeah.
which could be the search everything page.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, these are all good ideas. But for now, the short version is go ahead and throw it in backdrop contrib. We'll figure out what to do with it in the future. I think we can. Hang on, let me see if we can actually change. No, you cannot change. We'll have to figure it out. But the backdrop, the corresponding node that is created on backdropcms.org, there's different node types for node versus, or sorry, module versus theme, and I think that might be because there's different fields depending on whether or not it's a theme versus a module, which I could see happening. So if you create a project right now, well, first of all, if there's no .info file, doesn't matter what you do, it won't show up on backdropcms.org, period. And so I think just putting it in backdrop contrib, if there's no info file at all, that will prevent it from creating a matching node because it won't know what type of node it should create. So that could work for the time being. Just leave an absent node ID, or sorry, an absent .info file. But then as we sort out this like utility type, then we could start retroactively going through, updating, adding .info files, and then making a corresponding new node type.
If there is a .info file, but the type field is missing, does that just not get anything moved into p.org, or
Yeah,
crossing of streams?
It will do a couple of things. It will not make a node on backdropcms.org, but what backdropcms.org will do when it gets a notification of a new module existing in contrib, it looks for a .info file, and if it can't find one, or if the type is equal to something that's not module, theme, or layout, what it will do is it'll upload a txt file to the release thing on GitHub that is the log, the log that says this is a failure, like I failed to create a project for this reason. And if you open up the text file, it'll tell you there's something wrong with your repository because your .info file isn't valid, which could be undesirable for a project that intentionally doesn't have a .info file. But for the time being, a module maintainer can just simply delete that file from the release node, and then that'll solve the problem. Solve the problem, air quotes there. Yeah, any other thoughts or ideas on these utility projects? I think possibly we should separate this issue out because I don't think that there is an issue for this specifically. There's, the more info and .info files, but I think that we should have a separate, like a separate issue,
Yeah.
a separate issue just for this, like non-module utilities.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things that involves both infrastructure changes in the backdropcms.org, the GitHub integration that we have, the modules. So the core related thing is that if we come up with another project type, is that the project installer should skip or ignore the type of those projects, so not to show them within backdrop, like within the software.
Yeah, which as long as it's not a module or a theme, that will happen automatically. Yeah. So I think the key thing is for now,
Yeah.
you put it in backdrop contrib, but don't declare its type equals module. Otherwise, it will start showing up. Yeah.
And in terms of creating an issue, that should probably go, should that go in the backdrop cms.org issue queue?
Yeah, it
That's
should,
probably the best place.
because that we'll need to create the content type, and then
Yeah.
the project integration is on backdropcms.org right now too. So there's actually no core work that needs to be done here. This is purely a backdropcms.org thing. Okay, let's see. Next topic we have here. So hang on, maybe I'll just read this one because because it has a lot of things. Okay, or Tim, if you want, it's your concern. Would you like to summarize and say it in your own words?
This is the issue about the bugs, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So, yeah, really quickly, we had in the prior to the last security release, we had discovered a bug in the dev branch, and we had a PR ready to go. But we didn't flag that to the core maintainer in any way, so that when a release was cut, the core maintainer was unaware of an existing bug in the branch. And so, number one, the question is, how do we, in the future, what's the best way to handle that to prevent releasing, cutting a release when we know there's a bug there? And then I think too, the follow-up issue is, if that does happen, how can we better respond quickly? Because it's been 2 weeks now where we've got kind of a bad bug that's it's basically in a security release right now. And the sooner we could have fixed this, the fewer people would have to go through the release twice. But anyways, so those are the questions. I'll posit. I mean, I threw, we could create a new tag or something, although I'm not sure that solves it. The easiest solution would be that we just send a note directly to if we see a bug in the current dev branch, is that we specifically contact a core maintainer and draw their attention to it. But I really need to hear from you, Nate. Like, what do you think would work, or how could we handle this from your perspective?
Well, I think the solution that we have right now, which would have been effective in this situation, would have been reaching out via Zulip to individual core committers like myself or BW Panda or Laren or any, the ones that we have. That probably would have worked to prevent this problem, because it was just like we just didn't see it,
Right.
before the release was made. It did go through the RTBC list before the release, but it wasn't marked RTBC yet, and
Right.
so it could have been. There was already a pull request, and so we missed it on that approach too. That I think I like to go through the RTBC list, and I think everybody else does too, to make sure that we get in as much as possible before release. And so that also would have worked, although it would have been incorrect use of our tags. If you would have marked it RTBC, I would have looked at it, even if it wasn't, even if it wasn't officially ready yet. And I've seen people abuse that label for that purpose before, and it is effective, even though I don't really like to see it done that way. So the problem with the first approach, though, that would have been most effective and correct, just asking the core committers, is that not everybody knows who the core committers are or who would be the best person to tackle something. So while that
Nate,
would work, it's not the great solution for like everybody to use. Plus, they'd have to be on Zulip, which not everybody's on Zulip either. So.
how about a release blocker tag? I know that we hate adding more tags, but how about that?
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I was going to say, is that like adding more tags is another thing that's kind of the solution that seems like it would be the right one. And yeah, my hesitation is definitely, there's more tags, that makes finding it and needing to know when to use it, that adds a new learning curve there as well. Yeah, I'm open to other ideas though. Joseph, I see you unmuted.
I was just going to also add that it also adds more steps to the release process. And if we go down this, then we could potentially have, you know, half a dozen or a dozen tags that you have to check every time you make a release or whatever.
So, I mean, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but another question is like, what in a case like this? Okay, I found a bug. Something got merged into the dev branch. It's a bug. So, should the immediate response be to just revert that commit? My fear about like if I just contact a core committer in Zulip and they're not prepared to deal with it right now, and then it could easily sort of get forgotten. But if the if we decided that, well, really the appropriate response here would be to revert the commit, I mean, that's like a specific action that could be taken fairly quickly to prevent it from getting released, as opposed to like, oh, well, let's just try to get this fixed before the next release. And then we try, but we don't, and then we forget. So maybe the appropriate thing to do here, which it didn't occur to, I just thought, my assumption was we'll fix this before the next release. And maybe my assumption should have been, let's get this out of the dev branch until we get it fixed.
Yeah, I think that, so in the event that that time is short and it requires some specific knowledge to like solve the problem, reverting should always be an option. Like it should be an easily available option that any core committer can perform that action of like reverting the commit, even without the knowledge of the issue previously. That does make a frustrating experience sometimes for the developer that worked on some particular issue and then it gets reverted after they'd done all the work, because then that person presumably is now responsible for recreating another pull request that fixes the bug that, then they have to get it in and they have to go through the whole process again. And that's fine as long as we're not like I don't want to discourage the contributors that are doing that. And so reverting is always an option, but I'm not sure that it should be the one that we go to first. So I think that we should always look at, can we fix this easily and quickly with a follow-up? And then if the answer to that is no, but the problem is this is still a big bug, then we should go to reverting. I think that if there's a known problem, we don't have time or the ability to fix it before release, we should revert it before the next release. Like, I think that should generally always happen. But this was a case where, yeah, it's like fixing it, I think, was the right approach in this case because it wasn't a hard fix.
Right.
Yeah. So those are just my thoughts on things. It's again a little bit of a fuzzy area because it's really about, what does the situation call for, whether or not you want to revert something or not.
I don't want to, seem like I'm insisting, although I'm doing that. But trying to approach the core developers via Zulip or leave a message. And even if we do, maybe it gets forgotten, or they don't have time at that time. And then we have time zone differences. And someone else suggested that we mention core committer group in the issue. So instead of doing specific person in the issue, we use the group mention in GitHub. But if it were, I understand the overhead of having just another step and another label, but the label would be there. And if the process that I'm trusting core committers are following has a step that says, hey, check if there's any release blocker.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of like takes the human factor or most of the human factors and the time zone factors out of the equation. So the other solutions that were suggested are fine from less overhead perspective, but if we want to be diligent about not getting things out there and also providing a time zone agnostic way for people to do it, then I think having like a way, if labels is not preferable, maybe we create projects that are release. I'm referring to the feature projects, the GitHub projects feature, which is tagged as a release, and then we add things in there, or something like that. Uh, but yeah, anyways, food for thought. And we have another core committee that joined, by the way. I would be happy to hear what they said. Peter, if you're there.
I came in halfway through this conversation, so I'm not sure exactly what all the conversation's about, but I just heard the last bit. And if you're worried about putting extra tags on the issue queue, what about, because this discussion seems to be specific to like a pull request, making a change or doing something, whatever. So what about adding tags to the issue of the pull request place? Because that doesn't really, we don't really use tags there currently, and they're not really visible to most users. So that wouldn't be like adding more overhead or whatever you call it, but maybe that would be an option because that's what we're actually doing the merge on is the pull request. Maybe if there's a tag there to say don't merge or blocker or whatever, maybe that's an option instead.
Sorry, for your benefit, for context, Peter, is that there was a bug that we released the security release with, and it was a known issue. We had a pull request for it. We just didn't do a good job at communicating to core committers that the release should not go out without the fix being merged as well. So we had the options to either merge the fix, which was not marked RTBC, or revert the change. So we have a release out there now that has a rather serious or obvious, I should say, bug. And that's what we have been discussing, improving the workflow and our processes so we don't, we try to prevent these things from happening in the future. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, speaking personally, I think I would be okay with another label. I think we need to come up with a good one. One idea, Peter, that you had about putting it on the pull request. I don't frequently check the pull request list just directly because there's a lot in there that is or is not actually actionable. But one problem with putting a label on the pull request is that only committers have access to put labels on there, or organization owners, because we do this thing where we like manually add people to the triage group for backdrop issues. So a lot of people have access to those labels, but very few people have access to labels on the pull requests themselves. You know, which could be useful, except that sometimes the people that need to do the flagging, like actually, you know, they don't have that permission. So, and yeah, I think putting it on the issue would be preferable, even though we already have a lot of labels. But I don't really want to make that decision unilaterally. I'm not really sure if this is a PMC type thing. If you want to vote on adding a label, that also seems like excessively bureaucratic. But yeah, what do you guys think, Tim and Greg? You guys are the PMC reps here.
I think that we should ask, first of all, the core committees to get, maybe someone has a better idea, because we want to make things convenient for them as well. We don't want to add unnecessary overhead, but if it's that overhead versus the consequences, yeah, well.
I mean, to me, I would agree that it's, this doesn't feel like it's sufficiently a PMC issue, but most importantly, that the core committers feel like it's going to work for them. I'm a little bit, I share Greg's concern. As the person who found this issue, I'm a little bit concerned about the notion that I should have just pinged somebody in Zula and that would have necessarily prevented this. Because to me, that feels like there would have been plenty of but I'm not sure that adding a tag necessarily would fix it either, because this is the first time I can think of that this has happened in 3 years. And if, you know, this tag only gets used every 3 years, there's still going to be a human tendency to like, oh, I don't have to look for that tag because nobody ever uses it. Right.
Yeah,
even
we can build it into the release checklist.
Yes.
Okay.
Which,
The
you know,
process.
requires that you check the box. And the release checklist, I literally make sure that I do every single step before I check the box. So that seems to be pretty effective as far as a process goes.
Got it. Well, that's what we need. We really need something that you think is going to work, or you know, whoever is doing this. And I mean, the other part of this question is that I think right now we have multiple. My assumption about this is that we have multiple core committers that could do a release. So once we did discover this bug that had been released, we came up with a pull request pretty quickly. It even got merged, but now it's sat merged for over a week. And my assumption is that, Nate, is that you're not the only one that could do a release, but that nobody else feels comfortable doing a release. And so I think the other part of this solution is that we need to make sure that more than one person feels, empowered and ready to, somebody should have been able to step up and cut a release sooner.
Yeah, this is another thing where I think as far as the ability to create a release, I think that's
Mhm.
actually fairly distributed.
Right.
Let me see, because I know that yeah, I made the release nodes for 1.20.2, but I think that uh, it wasn't me that made the tag. I think excuse me, I can't totally remember who it was, but I think it was Laren.
Okay.
Actually made the release tags, which is helpful, and others have made releases previously. What was actually lacking here is the feeling of authority that they can make a release at an arbitrary time,
Right.
And so if we schedule it and say, like, here's the time that we want a release to be made, I think that we can get our existing core committers to make releases like in like separate from me entirely. There's been one or
Right.
two releases where I wasn't involved at all.
Okay.
So I think when that happens, we just need another authority to like actually do the scheduling of like we should make a release. And right now, yeah, I mean, our release process mostly is, well, if it's a security release, the schedule gets pushed on us most of the time. But if it's just an intermittent release, it's usually whenever, you know, we have time.
Right.
I'll be honest, whenever I have time and I feel like making one.
Right.
But that could be the case for anyone, and I don't think that we will get to a point that we're having releases too frequently. Like, I don't think that that's really a problem that we need to be too concerned about. And so I think that we could probably try to nurture a culture of anybody that feels like there should be a release should be able to make a release like anytime. The problem is that it's just actually a lot of work to make a release. So there's that whole portion of like it, it takes effort to actually go through all the steps and to do all the things, and there's a lot of people involved. So there does need to be like a little bit of scheduling just to like let people know that it's happening. But
Well,
yeah, but a lot of the tasks we do them asynchronously, like after release, like Peter goes through and updates tugboats, that happens a day or two after the release sometimes, and that's fine. Yeah.
I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but in this specific case, Nate, were you aware of the issue, just didn't have time, or were you not even aware of the issue for these past 2 weeks? Because
I didn't see it. Yeah.
yeah, so would I imagine that's, and the reason why I'm asking it is, would the leadership thread in Zulip, the committer thread, just to avoid noise, be something that would draw your attention? And Peter as well, the same question for you. So would that, I know that there's limited people that have access to that, but there's many more, and most of us are very active, that we could ping you guys there if that's more appropriate. Because I know Zulip is a lot of noise, but could you sort of like just limit your attention to that queue? And we never abuse it, and we use it in emergencies only.
Yeah, the leadership chat in Zulip is very effective for me personally.
Okay.
But again, like only a very small number of people actually have access to that group. So that's only core committers and the PMC at this point. So, but that would have also have worked if if PMC members need to surface something to core committers. I think Zulip in the leadership channel is exactly the right place. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess from all of that, so if we want to, speaking of the Zulip chat, I think that also could be a great place to discuss making a new tag. if we want to work that out amongst ourselves without doing it publicly, because if somebody resists it and it just doesn't go anywhere, we can figure that out using the chat before we use an issue,
Sure.
possibly.
Just one last addition. I have noticed that the addition that we have in the announcements block that we have in the dashboard, the highlighting has worked for me. Like it grabs my attention each time that I install something or I happen to work on a backdrop site. So maybe the moment that we realize that there is an issue and there's also a workaround or multiple workarounds, maybe make an announcement there and point to the thread in the forum so that site builders, site administrators see that and say, "Oh, beware! There's a bug. We have like a workaround for you while you wait for a release." Just as a note, just as an idea, and then the other thing is to the point. Can we make a release?
Oh yeah, we should have gotten to that too. Yes, we can totally make a release. Let's shoot for tomorrow. Does that sounds good?
I'll be around.
I'll go ahead and make the release node. So this is we're seeing it live. This is how releases are made and scheduled, right? Can we make a release? Yes, we make a node that is like from the template that says we're planning to schedule the release at X time. And then yeah, we'll go through the steps in the checklist. So yeah, we'll try to do that tomorrow. I think that'll leave plenty of time to go through the very extensive RTBC queue that is there already. I think it was pointed out before the meeting that there's 14 issues that are marked RTBC, some of which I'll be really happy to see. I'd love to take a look at this 4342, the modal window, how it jumps to the top every time you open the modal. I'd love to see that fixed because that just drives me up the wall. So yeah, lots of really great fixes that are in the RTBC queue right now that we'll want all of them to get in. Yeah, and the issue at stake here, the block title, that's in the list, right? Because it's marked RTBC too, isn't it? Oh no, it's already been committed.
It's actually already been committed,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, there's only 2 issues that have been added already. Okay. All right. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll shoot for that.
Okay.
And then over in the leadership queue, we'll talk about adding a new tag.
Sounds good.
And who should start that thread? Greg, are you up for that?
Yeah, I'll do
If
that.
you want to propose a name too, that's going to be possible.
Release blocker.
Release
Release blocker seems nice to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, there's a couple of other special tags. Most of them are like status dash whatever or needs dash whatever. But there's blocked, contrib candidate, design, good first issue, and help wanted. So there are these special ones. And release blocker sounds good. It will be sorted alphabetically, which is kind of annoying, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, we can have it all caps because it's important.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Release blocker! Exclamation marks.
You can have it be a red color, and that would be enough, I think.
That's just crazy talk. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds good. Let's see. We don't really have time to do the full status update on things. Although I wanted to draw attention to this issue that is very exciting that Doc Wilmot has been working on, issue 5257, that adds a search or quick filter to the list of simple tests. I'm very excited about that one. It's already it's a new feature, so it's in the 1.21 milestone. So I guess you could possibly call this a UX improvement, and so we could potentially put it into the next bug fix release as well. But anyway, I'm excited about this issue. Just the fact that it exists, it's been something I've been looking for a long time, and I'm glad that Doc Wilmot put that together for us. Very excited. Any other issues you guys would like to discuss today?
Well, I'd like to do just almost an announcement. I posted in Zulip yesterday. We're a month away from the next feature freeze for 1.21. And something that worked well, I thought at least it worked well for me a few issues ago, was we created a blog post where anybody could list the issues that they're up to 3 issues that they would like to focus on and or would like help with. And it's just a chance for all of us to sort of flag the issues that we're really focused on for the next few weeks. And I went ahead and I got a few responses to that. So I created the blog post. It's already published, but the plan is to just keep updating that through Feature Freeze. So if anybody wants to add something to that list, my thought, or the way we did this last time, is you can have 3 issues at a time on that list. So if one of them gets merged or gets completed, you can take that off and add another one. And then again, it's purely meant to, as in, to help other people discover what issues need help. There's no guarantees or no. In fact, I have a little note at the bottom of the blog post which says, none of the issues here have been necessarily approved for inclusion. This is just the personal opinions of each person. So one, if anybody wants to add something to that list, you can. If you have edit access, feel free to just edit the list yourself. It's a blog post on backdrop.org. If you don't have edit access, or you just don't want to, just flag me and Zulip and I'll add it. And along those lines, we don't need to discuss this now, but I think we could do this informally. Is just for the last few releases, we've tried to schedule 1 or 2 sort of sprint days leading up to the release. And if anybody has suggestions or thoughts on that, let's do that in Zulip and just schedule 1 or 2 days. It'll be a little harder for this release because of the holidays, maybe, but I think we can put something on the schedule.
Also, perhaps we could take advantage of the office hours, or schedule, I don't know, for those that prefer the weekends, some sprints, code review sprints, or workshops, whatever. I'm up for that.
It's a great point. I think most of us have all been there at least, but our friend Wilbur has committed himself to making sure that we do have somebody there for office hours every Wednesday through at least the end of the year. So for the last 3 weeks, we've actually had regular office hours with somebody in the Zulip room or in the Zoom room, and we had like 5 or 6 people there last week. So we could use that time as a great time to check in and sort of do sprinting, sort of little 2-hour mini sprints every week. So that's it. If anybody has any questions or comments, otherwise we can move on.
No, sounds great. I went ahead and filed the issue for the release. It's 5382, so we'll be doing that tomorrow. That's set. All right. I don't have anything else for today, so I think we can call it a meeting. Thank you everybody for joining this week. Thanks for the great suggestions, participating in the forum. It was mentioned before, like, thanks for all the new contrib projects that's happening. Thank you for the RTBC queue that is full of great things that are all happening. So yeah, very exciting. I guess we're actually, like, last week was Thanksgiving for us Americans, so this is actually 2 weeks of work all piled up. Maybe that's why it seems like so much is happening. But yeah, I'm still, yeah, I guess, Thanksgiving, thankful for all of our contributors out there. So yeah,
Right. Thanks.
keep up the great work. Okay, thank you.